You're listening to Dirty Feet, a podcast from No More Radio.
Vous écoutez le podcast Dirty Feet sur les ondes de No More Radio.
Hosted by,
animé par
Allison Burns,
JD Papillon,
et Stéphanie Morin-Robert.
Stay tuned.
We're gonna move you.
I'm here at the Free Flow Dance Center in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and I have the pleasure of speaking with Jackie Latendresse about the Free Flow Dance Company and your center, and hopefully a little bit more about the community here in Saskatoon. We would love to hear about a dance in the West. We're inundated with information about Montreal, so we're doing something a little different this week, and we're reaching out to Saskatoon. Jackie, thank you so much for agreeing to sit down with me today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me on your show.
Great. So I would love to start even just with the space here, that is an absolutely gorgeous space that you put together 5 years ago?
Yeah, just over 5 years ago, I got this old church, and it's been renovated into a dance space. With these are actually the original floors, and they were underneath all of the carpet and linoleum. It's actually a maple floor, and so we lucked out. We didn't have to put anything too extravagant in, just get the other stuff off of the top, and it was right here waiting for us.
Lovely. And what would you say, are there a lot of dance centers around Saskatoon?
There's a lot of dance studios. I would say the majority of them are designed for children, and their main focus would be on recitals and dance competitions and those type of things. As far as dance centers go, there is the Dance Saskatchewan Center, which is where the dance library is located, and resource center, and that's the provincial dance support group. They do have studios there, and they do rent them to a variety of types of dancers. But we're kind of unique here in that we focus on adult dance. We focus on professional and emerging dance. I specialize with modern and contemporary dance. And for fun, we also run the Rosebud Burlesque Club here. So we have a little bit of everything going on.
Fantastic. Burlesque is pretty hot in Montreal right now. They've gone from, one troupe 7 years ago to like a handful. So I'm wondering, what's the burlesque scene like in Saskatoon?
It's not big. It's big, but the only group that's really happening in Saskatoon is the group that we run called Rosebud Burlesque Club. We do have quite a big membership, and we've been running for 7 years now. So we're pretty well established, and we do lots of variety shows and performances. We do most of our shows in theaters and in our own space. We don't do nightclub or bar shows, which makes us a little bit different from a lot of the burlesque clubs across Canada, who the majority of their shows would be in bars.
Right.
So we've cultivated a little bit more of a theatrical scene, and we're very retro, so we try to include sort of the old school thought of having comedians and variety acts and those types of things with our shows. Because I'm a bit of a dance history nerd, that's sort of my thing.
Speaking of you and your background, of course, that would affect so much what ends up happening here at the Free Flow Dance Center. What is your background? What is your training?
I come from the University of Waterloo Dance Department, so I have a HBA in dance focusing on choreography with a minor in fine arts and visual arts. And I was trained there it was in the School of Kinesiology, underneath kinesiology, so we have a lot of human anatomy and motor development background, as well as the Laban sort of school of thought. So that's sort of where my background's coming from. Of course, as a dancer, you're always training, so you keep taking classes and workshops with people. We have actually a great workshop coming up next week that I'll be definitely taking some classes in. It's the Bartinieff Laban system with Donna Redlick, which I'm very excited about. And then I taught at the University of Saskatchewan for 3 years, and my focus was basically teaching educators how to include dance in the arts education curriculum. So teaching teachers how to teach about dance, which was a lot of fun. The focus on that was history, criticism, and hands-on performance. So it was sort of threefold background. So I'm very much about the sort of all-directional approach to dance.
And speaking also about being a dance nerd or a dance history nerd, do you have a very kind of cerebral approach to dance, especially when it comes to choreography?
I would say my choreography comes in two different methods. One is I discover something. Usually it's kind of sciencey, because that's also a little bit of love of mine. And I, for instance, I'm currently working on a piece called Pods, and it's inspired by stop motion video of plants, specifically like vines and beans growing, and trying to find a way to convey that feeling through dance and through movement. So, that approach was very sort of, I grew some beans in my garden and I watched them grow, and I bring the dancers out and we look at them and those types of things. We also constructed some pretty fabulous costumes where each dancer has a pod sack that they're inside of. And inside the pod sack is also a mini trampoline. So it's very alien and exotic looking. It definitely doesn't look human. And so sometimes my approach is that way. And then also, and I do a lot of work that is a little bit on the darker side, a little bit heavier, but I try to even it out with some comedic work. And so my love of vaudeville and all of those cabaret styles sort of leads me into more humorous work. And I really appreciate, one of my mentors is Danny Grossman, and I love his serious work, but I also love his comedic style. And we had him out for a residency a few years ago to work with us to remount his piece Triptych. And we've been touring it around and showing it all around Saskatchewan, because people need to see more of his work out here. But I just also love his sense of irony and levity of joy of life. And so I try to make sure that I don't get too bogged down by the dark side of dance.
You founded the Free Flow Dance Company almost 20 years ago now. You're going to be celebrating the 20th anniversary next year, is that right?
Yes, we're really excited about that. We are actually currently in process of working with the Dance Saskatchewan Library, and we've received a grant from the Archive Board, and they are currently archiving 20 years of free flow dance photography, and they'll be hosting that archive out of their library, which is the largest dance lending library in Canada. So we're really thrilled to be working on that with them. And we're continuing with another 2-year part of that project to archive all of the video and all of the paper programs, posters, etc., which is absolutely thrilling to me, because as we know, dance is a fleeting art. It happens, it's gone, it's often lost, it's not documented or archived well. And to know that some of my work is going to survive well past me is an amazing thing to just understand, and I'm really appreciative of them and all the work that they're doing to help keep that alive in Canada's dance history.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's great news. I'm wondering, of these 20 years, almost 20 years, being the artistic director and also choreographing primarily for the company, what have you been able to see trends in yourself in terms of your changing choreographic styles?
Yeah, definitely. I've been actually going through and reviewing our repertoire, our company repertoire, which is quite big. Actually, I was very surprised when I look back at how many pieces we have in repertoire and how many pieces can logistically be remounted, because the choreography has been saved somehow via video, photography, and also choreography notes. And I looked at the work and definitely found certain trends. There are certain pieces that have emerged from the company over the years that all could be in the same show and make a cohesive show. And that's, over a period of 19 years, quite spread out. So definitely I've been evolving a style. Some of the work is shorter from 19 years ago. I think that some of the works could be further developed into longer works even now if I look at them. But as far as we always use the term dance theater to describe us because we're not strictly dance. We don't necessarily perform narrative theater or anything like that, although we have a wonderful piece called The Dark Fairy Tale that was a fairy tale written for us by a local author, and it was definitely a story from beginning to middle to end. But normally we work in a sort of non-linear narrative form where it's a little bit more dreamlike and suggestive as opposed to telling a story. But I do think we have quite a number of the works encompass theatrical elements, maybe not quite as dramatic as De Rosier or something like that. We don't have the budget that they had, but that make us stand apart a little bit from, I say, more traditional contemporary dance, if that's a bit of an oxymoron.
You said, I believe at the beginning, you said you specialize in contemporary and modern dance. What is the distinction for you between the two?
Well, I think modern dance is, it's more, I identify it as the style that I was trained in at university, where I was trained in classic style of Graham and Limon techniques, and also heavily influenced by people like Merce Cunningham and Danny Grossman. And so I think of those as a more traditional modern dance technique, whereas I feel that contemporary dance, now the definition of it has expanded to include creating your own movement vocabulary for works dependent upon your subject matter. It has room for fusion of styles. For instance, you could fuse the vaudevillian feel with contemporary dance movement or invented movement that is abstracted from what people would think a cabaret style would be. And I feel like contemporary moves with the times. It allows you to continue to develop. Modern dance I see more as a very distinct stylistic category within contemporary dance.
Can we talk a bit about the company members? How large is the company at the moment?
We usually employ 3 to 5 dancers, dependent on grant funding. This year we do have 3 dancers. And if we have a special project, we bring in extra dancers. For instance, we created a very large-scale event called the Great Mystery Project, which was funded by the Canada Council. And that was a cast of 14. So you don't get to do that very often, but wow, is that thrilling to actually be able to work with that many people and to be able to afford to do that. Mm-hmm. It was I guess it was a audience immersive interactive event. So there were no seats in the theater. The theater was just a space that was designed to look like the universe. Everything was in black light and LED, and the audience were participants within the event itself. They got a little survival guide. They got a light to move around with, fractal glasses. So when they wore them, all the lights would, make fractals and rainbows. And it was based on the idea of the universe mixed with Blackfoot cosmology. I was working with a local artist, Adrian Stimpson, and he is a First Nations performance artist and visual artist, quite well known nationally and internationally. And also it was fused with sort of the feeling or aesthetics of Burning Man, and the 10 guiding principles of Burning Man, which would include radical self-expression, radical self-reliance, immediacy, living in the now, experiencing the now, and participating. So it was a very large cast. It was scripted in a way that maybe a performance art happening would be scripted, and it was a 2-hour participatory, totally immersive event. You walked into the universe, you went on a trip through the universe. It had dance, film, live opera singing, it had a DJ and synthesizer player, live mixing everything. It had kinetic prop spinners. It had a universe costume with 10-foot wings on it. It had a section where everyone who was participating laid on the floor, and all the dancers made the constellation Pleiades above them in the air with giant glowing hoops, while the First Nations story about the constellation was being told by our navigator, and there was film, and it was just a really wonderful multimedia, mixed media participatory event.
Wow, that sounds incredible. With this idea of collaborating with other artists and bringing them in and presenting them in Saskatoon, do you also take your company and your work outside of Saskatoon?
We used to tour a lot. We actually did the Fringe, Cross Canada Fringe, I think 4 or 5 years in a row. We do occasionally bring works around to different places. We do apply for festivals. As we all know, getting travel funding, et cetera, is getting harder and harder. So traveling and touring works can be tricky, but it's definitely something that's on our agenda. We're hoping to be heading back to Kitchener-Waterloo next year as part of our 20-year anniversary, to work with the original group of choreographers collective that I helped found in Kitchener-Waterloo in 1994.
I would love to also speak about the WIP program that you mentioned, the Works in Progress. How is this formatted?
The Works in Progress series is made up of 3 showings, 2 informal in-studio showings, and a gala performance of finished works. And the way that we run it is we accept applications from choreographers describing their work. It doesn't have to be too descriptive because it is in progress, with a list of the types of feedback they're looking for and ideas that they're wanting to discover. And we book them to come into our in-studio space here. It's run like a weekend-long type of event. So people arrive and they're given a tech time, and then we present the show. And at the show, the audience is given the direction. When they arrive, they're all given pens and papers and little clipboards, and they're told that they're going to hear the choreographers speak about their work, and then they're going to get a chance to see the new work. And then after each work, they'll be given a few minutes to write down their comments and feedback for the choreographers so they can continue to develop their work. Which is quite exciting for audiences because they may come back to the gala and they may see some of their feedback actually implemented in the work, or just to see how the work has grown and changed. So we invite people to come from anywhere. We've had lots of people from all across Canada come and show work, and we still have another one coming up this year. We've had one already, very successful one this spring, and then the next day we do have a guest mentor who attends the show, and he or she comes in and has individual meetings with each of the choreographers to discuss the work and push us in whatever direction they need to be pushed, to ask relevant questions and give constructive criticism, of course. And then that is usually followed by a workshop. We invite one of our out-of-town guests to run a movement workshop of some kind, whatever they happen to specialize in. And that's open to the participants of the WIP series, and we do open it to the general public so they can come in and take some classes with some of our guest artists as well. So that series has been running for I want to say 10 years. It's been running for 10 years, so it's pretty well established. It had its ups and downs, a lack of funding, and things have been always obstacles. But it's still running strong, and people would like to see it, and do come out and support it. So I don't see it disappearing. It's just sort of shifting and changing with the times as it goes along.
The mentorship part of this series, finding the right mentor is always a bit tricky, I take it. It's not only somebody has to be a strong artist, but also somebody who's a teacher and a communicator and
It is very tricky.
Yeah.
And in a small community like Saskatoon, it can be even harder. We have had, this year our mentor is Graham McKelvey, and we're lucky that he's just happened to move back to Saskatoon, and he is, a very internationally known, established dance artist and choreographer. And teacher, and he was actually teaching, I think it was at the University of Osaka in Japan for the last 2 years, and he's just moved back. So we are very fortunate to have him this year. Previous mentors have included very well-known theater directors who also are involved with movement theater, and we have also had contemporary dancer, also ballet dancer and mime, professional mime, come and work with the dancers as well. So it's always interesting to try to find somebody fairly local that can come and spend the time to work with the dancers.
In the winter, we recorded an episode called Cabaret Tollé, and it was about funding cuts. And we were, of course, focused on what was happening in Montreal with funding cuts, and we spoke a bit about what was happening in Toronto as well. And then hearing you talk a bit about the WHIP program and kind of the ups and downs that are happening there with funding cuts as well. Do you mind speaking a bit about what you're experiencing in that
Sure.
field?
We're very fortunate in some ways, and unfortunate in other ways. The fortunate part is that the Saskatchewan Arts Board was the first arts board in Canada. So it's been around the longest. It's very well established. They have some great programs, and they really know their stuff. They're pretty on the ball in terms of following the trends of what's happening in the arts community and revamping programs, etc. However, that said, there's never enough money in any given category to support all of the great projects that applications arrive. Specifically in dance, the history of dance in Saskatchewan is pretty small. So the funding allocated for dance in Saskatchewan is also very small in comparison to, say, another category such as music or writers. There's a lot of writers that live here. It's a very, very solid history of writers and poets that are from here. So that has always been a little bit of an obstacle. So I do encourage as many dancers out here as possible to apply, always apply, because the more people applying, the more funds allocated to your specific genre. And this is a good thing to know. Also, as far as like federal funding for the prairie provinces, and not just Saskatchewan, but for the prairie provinces, is sadly lacking. If you look at their website, they have a list of each category and what's been funded and where the group is from. And out of curiosity, some artist friends and I spent some time on there looking, and it is actually quite disheartening. And it could be due to the lack of applications. It could be smaller population, etc. I'm not sure, but the funding for prairie artists does seem to me to be lower than what I expected. However, the funding for Aboriginal artists in Canada in the prairies is probably higher than perhaps in other places, because the population of Aboriginal people living here is higher. I myself am a Métis, and I do I am a card-carrying Métis, so I do apply for Aboriginal funding. However, I'm not working in a traditional form, and I have mostly applied in the regular funding category because I feel that that is the category that I am working in. And so it's kind of a little bit of a catch-22 in terms of funding. Also, I feel that locally there could be more corporate sponsorship support for dance specifically, because the history of the province is in theater and music. If you look at the giant festivals they have here, it's the Jazz Festival and the Blues Festival and the Fringe Festival, and a lot of music and theater, and huge corporate grants going out to those organizations. The interest in supporting lesser known art forms such as contemporary dance by these companies isn't as high. And we've been working to change that, of course, because, we live here, so we have forged a lot of great allies with different people, but it's slow going. And it's, if I had $1 for every hour I worked on a grant application, I'd have a grant, right? So, it's a little bit of that, running around in a circle and eating your own tail kind of thing, trying to find the money. I do think people out here, though, are ready for art, and they're ready to be pushed, and they're ready for new things in contemporary work, not just in dance, but also in visual arts and theater and interesting and new edgy things, and they want it. It's just convincing mainstream businesses that, yes, this is the next wave.
That can be a tricky issue, though. For example, the Fringe Festival is sponsored by Potash Corp, which I don't know how many people are completely comfortable with that. It's hard to say no to corporate sponsorship, but at the same time, sometimes your values as an artist don't necessarily line up with those of the company doing the sponsoring.
Yes, I highly agree. And out here, a lot of the major businesses are potash and agriculture related and mining related, and they don't always line up with your vision and your moral belief system. There are always other alternatives. Companies that there are always going to be companies that you do mesh with and that you do find ways to sort of benefit each other. But yeah, I agree. It's a really fine line to balance. You don't want to be putting a logo of something that you don't believe in all over your print materials. So it is tricky as an artist to stand by what you're trying to do and also find the funding to do it.
So other than we've taken the financial temperature of Saskatoon art scene, can you speak to kind of the flavor of what's happening in Saskatoon in terms of dance, or in Saskatchewan abroad?
Yes. In Saskatoon, there's not actually a heck of a lot going on, I have to say. We're pretty isolated out here. We love having guests, though, so please come and visit us. In terms of professional companies, right now, Free Flow Dance is the major dance company in Saskatoon. There are some independent professional dancers, and most of which have danced with us at one point or another, which is wonderful. So we have a really nice, close community. We all know each other. We support each other, and many of the dancers and choreographers that I've worked with previously will come and present at the WIP and things like that. But there's not really a scene per se in terms of professional dance in Saskatoon. Kazam Dance is one of the smaller, they're a 2-person dance company. There's a few independent choreographers that live in town and that do occasionally show up and produce a show. It's sometimes far and few between, but it's always really exciting when it does happen. There is a Circus of Life dance and circus-based group here, and there were a couple of sort of emerging ballet companies, both of which have closed down. The scene here tends to be very heavy on cultural and folk dance, very heavy, which I love. It's wonderful. And, when we do our International Dance Day celebration, it is huge and it is packed. And, we have every style of dance under the sun, which is wonderful to see. And then I would say if you were looking for more of contemporary dance scene, Regina has a more fully formed scene than Saskatoon because of Robin Poitras and New Dance Horizons, who's been around for, I believe, at least 25 years. And they bring in excellent performers from all over Canada, top quality, top-notch work. They have a series called the Blueprint series, which is similar to the WHIP series. And they do cultivate performers to come in for residencies and things like that. There's also another group there called Fata Dance, which actually I think they're like the Regina version of Free Flow. I just love them. We're like two peas in a pod. We've done some collaborative work, and they're very theatrical and mixed with contemporary dance. And maybe like a little bit of like fairy magic or something. They're very exotic, beautiful, sort of wonderful, wildly bizarre dance company that they've been going strong for at least for 10 years or so. I think they just celebrated their 10-year anniversary, actually. So there is a bit more of a scene. There's also a lot more independent choreographers working out of Regina. I think it's, it is the capital city. Maybe it's a little closer to the border. But definitely the scene has been cultivated by New Dance Horizons there. And it definitely shows. We're probably a decade and a half behind Regina in terms of growing the dance scene in Saskatoon. But it's getting there.
Bringing it back just to Saskatoon, in putting together our Fringe, Saskatoon Fringe episode, we ended up booking primarily physical theater artists, a lot of whom were local to Saskatoon. I'm wondering if there's any overlap there of people interested in physical theater kind of also dipping their toes in dance art or...
Yeah, there definitely is. I would say there's lots of, I have met a lot of clowns and mimes and acrobats and hula hoopers and various kinetic prop manipulators, and they're all interested in dance. And I would say the cabaret sort of scene here is definitely growing because of that. So it has the flair of dance and magic, to mix together. And I'm part of that as well through the burlesque club and through some of my participatory stuff as well. That's growing faster, I would say, than perhaps what I would call like theater stage dance, because the type of performers here definitely ranges further than just dance training. Lots of just movers and shakers and people who like to do physical theater and who are interested in the theatrical end of movement. And I am as well, so it kind of works to my benefit in a lot of ways. And I'd say, we host regular variety shows and things here, and we definitely have that crowd coming out to perform and also to watch.
Do you offer classes at your studio for non-professionals?
Yeah, we do. All of our classes are mixed level classes. So we have a mixture of new people right up to professionals. We put them all in the same class, and we have exercises that are tiered. So we have like, this is the basic level, this is the middle level, and this is if you know this already, you can do your advanced version. I don't teach the advanced versions in classes. They're advanced versions that have been taught separately, maybe through the company class or something like that. So because I don't want people to feel like they need to do an advanced level exercise. But yeah, it's a really nice atmosphere because it's really low stress and it's low competitive. Everybody works at their own speed. Everybody does the exercise at the level that they feel they should be working at. And I alternate between technical classes and creative classes. So I teach every second class. I teach about choreographic methods. and we work on discovering an element of choreography as opposed to always working on a tendu or something like that, or a set exercise, which people really enjoy because it allows them to actually discover their own personal style.
Are you able to speak at all about the potential Nuit Blanche, or is it too...
Well, it is the first year here, and people are pretty excited about it. It's going to be happening in September during Culture Days, and we have been in talks with Nuit Blanche because, of course, being pretty much one of the only contemporary dance companies around here, we would love to be involved with the Contemporary Art Festival. And they did come to see our newest piece, Pods, the little trampolines and the little fabric pods, and they really are looking forward to having that piece at the festival. So we know that we're going to be involved somehow with that. We've also approached them to sort of adopt the WHIP series for the weekend, and see if we might have to change the format a little bit to fit with the Nuit Blanche format. And it would be outside, which is always a challenge, but it's looking really positive, and they have shown some interest. So we should be finding out in the next couple of weeks, actually, if they're going to be taking that over. I had the phone call, and I have to phone them back. So I haven't done that yet, but it will be soon.
Great. Are there any other big projects on the horizon that you haven't already mentioned about Free Flow?
Yeah, I'm actually working on a brand new work called Movement Interruptus in C bracket EEL bracket minor, and it is what happens if you are told when you arrive in the theater to turn your cell phones on. And we're working with a little crew of technology guys, and they're developing an app for us, for people to download onto their cell phones. And it will be, again, in the theme of participatory immersive events. The audience becomes performer, and the performer becomes audience, and all of that with live feeds of social media. Also, they will have the ability to interact with the dancers on stage, so they can phone them and text them and leave messages, and we'll be using some of that material to create the soundscape for the final part of the show. And there's also a section where the audience becomes the lighting technical directors, and that's done through the cell phone app. Lighting application, and there'll be strobe lights, and there'll be morphing color screens, and hopefully there'll be a light chase through the audience through all the phones, and yeah, so it's going to be really interesting. We're really excited about it. We did not get funding for it, so it's one of those projects where we started it anyways, and now we're halfway through, and we refuse to give it up, even though we did not get our funding request for it. So we've convinced these lovely people to get on board and create these amazing technological applications by offering them free tickets, and perhaps we can, have a nominal fee for people to download the app, and that could go to them, and that type of thing. We're currently looking at technology companies for corporate sponsorship. And we think it would be that type of piece where you could book it for your corporate party, for your Christmas party or your staff party, because it especially if you're a technology-based industry, it would be so fun for all those people with their phones to be able to create their little dancer and give them moves and send them to us, and then we can use those to influence what's happening on stage. They can write cell phone music for us, and they can upload pictures of their eyes and mouths, and we use the phones to create eyes and mouths in the dark that could possibly include their photos and things like that. So it's going to be a really fun technology-based interactive piece, and that's our newest one. It's on the go, and I don't actually own a cell phone, So everyone thought I was absolutely insane to create this piece, but I think I'm actually the perfect person to create this piece because I don't own a cell phone. So I don't have any preconceived notions as to what cell phones can do, what they can't do, what the rules are. And when I met with the technology people, they thought I was just amazing because because I was giving them ideas they had never ever thought of or considered, and giving them fun puzzles to figure out as opposed to put my company's data on this app and let everyone be able to access it. Well, that's kind of boring for compared to make laser beams and those type of things. So I think it's going to be an interesting trip to see what happens.
I wish I was around to see it. Maybe I'll have to come back.
Maybe I'll tour it.
Ooh, even better. So where do we find out more information about Free Flow? I imagine on your website?
Yeah, we have a website. It's freeflowdance.com. And we also have a Facebook group, Free Flow Dance Theater Company. So people can look for us there. We also have a Facebook site for the WIP, WIP new dance series, and so if people are specifically interested in that, they can look it up there. There's also a section on the WIP on our website, so if choreographers are listening and they're thinking, hey, we want to go to Saskatoon, well, we would love to have you and go check out our information and send us your info.
Yeah, guys, check it out. It's a really charming place, Saskatoon. I've enjoyed my stay.
It's a beautiful city.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's definitely, as you were saying, there's a bigger theater scene, but there's definitely people here who are interested in art and are interested in coming out and supporting it, which is really nice.
Yep, for sure. I always joke that this is where all the musicians that ever wanted to disappear, they all end up in Saskatoon.
And so you guys have big bands coming through.
Huge bands, because they've all lived here at some point, I think. It's like a nice little rest spot for musicians and writers and artists. So, yeah, come visit us and hang out, have a vacation.
Just lovely. Thank you so much. I've been speaking with Jackie Latendresse about Free Flow Dance Company and the Free Flow Studio. And, well, you just listen to the interview. You know what we talked about. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Dirty Feet was previously recorded at the Montreal Improv Theatre and is currently recorded out of Mainline Theatre. Thanks, dudes.
Dirty Feet est produit et animé par,
produced and hosted by Allison Burns,
JD Papillon,
et Stéphanie Morin-Robert.
You can find out more about our show at nomoreradio.com, follow us on Twitter at Dirty Feet, and find us on Facebook at Dirty Feet Podcast.
Vous pouvez écouter tous nos épisodes sur notre site web ou vous pouvez vous abonner également sur iTunes à notre podcast.
Listen to past episodes on website or subscribe to the podcast on iTunes.
While you're there, be sure to give us a rating and or leave a comment to help us spread the word.
Tune in next week for a whole new show.